They say some moments haunt you forever. No matter how much time passes, no matter how hard you try to forget, they cling to you like a shadow, always lurking, always reminding you of the line you crossed. It's been 2 years since that day. 2 years since everything changed. And yet, even now, I can still hear his voice in my head. The way he said my name. The way his eyes widened, confused, uncertain. The way the air in the room suddenly felt heavy, like we had stepped into a place we weren't supposed to be. I remember the smell of the evening, warm food in the air, the faint trace of his cologne, the distant hum of the television playing a show neither of us were really watching. It was just an ordinary night, until it wasn't. You see, people always think they know what they would do in a situation like this. They think they understand their own limits, their own boundaries. They think I would never. But the truth is, you never really know. Not until you're standing on the edge, looking down, feeling something inside you whisper, just one step. Just one. And I took that step. It was innocent at first. Or at least, I told myself it was. A simple offer, nothing more. But the moment the words left my mouth, I knew. I saw it in his face. That flicker of hesitation. That moment of shock. And deep down, beneath the surface, something else, something neither of us wanted to admit was there. That was the moment. The one I can't take back. The one that still keeps me up at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying it over and over again. And now, I'm going to tell you everything. But before I do, I need you to ask yourself something. Have you ever felt a moment slip out of your control? Have you ever watched yourself do something you knew you shouldn't, but couldn't stop? Because if you haven't, then let me be the first to warn you, it only takes 1 second to cross a line that can never be erased. Before I reveal what really happened, make sure to subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Cases and turn on notifications. Trust me, this one is going to leave you speechless. I never thought my life would take this turn. If you had told me years ago that I would be sitting here, sharing this story, I would have laughed. I would have told you I was a good wife. A devoted mother. A woman who knew right from wrong. But life has a way of revealing parts of yourself you never knew existed. Parts you didn't want to know existed. My name? That doesn't matter. My face? You wouldn't recognize it if you passed me on the street. But what I felt, the emptiness, the loneliness, the quiet desperation of being unseen in my own home, that you might know all too well. I was 38. A wife. A stepmother. A woman who had spent years molding herself into the image of the perfect spouse, the perfect homemaker. But somewhere along the way, I lost myself. Or maybe I was never really there to begin with. My husband, let's call him David, was a provider in every sense of the word. He worked hard. He made sure there was food on the table, a roof over our heads, a comfortable life. But that's all it was, comfort. No warmth. No intimacy. No connection. He wasn't cruel, he wasn't abusive, he just wasn't there. At first, I made excuses for him. He's tired. He has a lot on his plate. He's doing all this for us. But over time, the excuses turned into questions. Does he even see me? Does he even care? I started to wonder if I was just another piece of furniture in his life, something useful, something expected, but nothing more. And then, there was Erick. My stepson. 20 years old, polite, respectful. The kind of young man any mother would be proud to have raised. Except I didn't raise him. I married his father when Erick was already a teenager. By then, he was mostly grown, independent, keeping to himself. We were never particularly close, never had that bond that some stepmothers and sons share. But there was always something about him. Something quiet, reserved. A mystery in his eyes that made it hard to tell what he was thinking. He wasn't like other boys his age, loud, reckless, always seeking attention. No, Erick was different. Thoughtful, observant. And as the years passed, I started to notice the way he noticed me. It wasn't blatant, not at first. Just small things. The way his eyes lingered a little too long when we spoke. The way he seemed to listen more intently than his father ever did. The way he was present. I told myself it was nothing. That I was imagining it. That I was reading too much into things because I was lonely. But the truth was, I was lonely. more lonely than I had ever been in my life. Imagine waking up every day next to someone who doesn't even look at you. Someone who used to touch you, kiss you, whisper in your ear at night, but now, you're just two people existing in the same space, barely acknowledging each other. The silence in our bedroom was suffocating. The absence of his touch was like an ache that never went away. And then, there was Erick. Noticing me. Seeing me. It started so subtly that I didn't even realize it was happening. Conversations that lasted a little longer than necessary. A passing comment about how I looked nice that made my stomach tighten in a way it shouldn't have. A moment in the kitchen when our hands brushed, and neither of us pulled away right away. I knew it was wrong. I knew I should have stepped back, should have drawn a clear line before things even had the chance to blur. But there was something intoxicating about being seen. About being noticed. About feeling wanted. And that was where everything began. That evening started like any other. Dinner had been quiet. David, as usual, had barely spoken. His phone had his full attention, emails, work messages, things that couldn't wait. Things that were always more important than sitting across from his wife and his son, sharing a meal together. I had long stopped trying to compete. Erick, on the other hand, was different. He always made eye contact when he spoke. Always gave me his attention in a way that felt deliberate. Like I was worth listening to. Worth seeing. I don't even remember what we had eaten that night. I just remember the way David stood up as soon as his plate was empty, muttered something about having work to do, and disappeared into his office, closing the door behind him. That was it. No conversation. No goodnight. Nothing. I sat there for a moment, staring at his untouched glass of wine, the quiet hum of the refrigerator filling the empty space he left behind. I felt the familiar sting creeping into my chest, that dull ache of being dismissed, of being invisible in my own home. And then, Erick spoke. "You okay?" Just 2 words. Simple. But they hit me in a way I wasn't expecting. I turned to him, forcing a smile, trying to shake the feeling off. "Yeah, I'm fine." He didn't look convinced. "You don't have to pretend with me, you know." Something in his voice made my throat tighten. It was the gentleness of it, the way he said it like he actually cared. I wasn't used to that anymore. I exhaled a quiet laugh, shaking my head. "I'm just tired." He nodded but didn't push. That was another thing about Erick. He knew when to say something, and he knew when to just be there. I stood up, collecting the plates, and he followed, helping me clear the table. I told him he didn't have to, but he insisted. "It's the least I can do," he said, flashing a small smile. And then, there it was. That moment. That subtle shift. I reached for a dish at the same time he did, and our hands brushed. Just for a second. Just skin against skin. But the reaction it sent through me was immediate, a shiver running up my spine before I could stop it. I pulled away too quickly, my breath catching in my throat. Erick didn't move at first. His eyes flickered up to mine, searching, questioning. I couldn't tell if he had felt it too, or if I was the only one who noticed the charge in the air between us. I forced a chuckle, brushing my hands on my dress. "Sorry, It's okay," he said, his voice quieter now, slower. I turned back to the sink, my mind racing. Why did that feel so? No. I cut the thought off before it could go anywhere. It was nothing. But then, I felt him still standing close behind me. The room suddenly felt too small. The silence stretched. The only sound was the slow trickle of water from the faucet, and before I knew it, the words slipped out. "Do you want to taste it?" I don't know why I said it. Maybe it was an attempt to break the tension. Maybe I just wanted to distract myself from whatever I was feeling. But the second the words left my mouth, I knew it had been the wrong thing to say. Or maybe, the right thing. I turned, holding up the spoon, the remnants of the dessert I had made earlier still on it. A completely innocent gesture. At least, it should have been. But the way Erick looked at me in that moment. He hesitated. His lips parted slightly, his expression unreadable. He wasn't looking at the spoon. He was looking at me. And then, slowly, he leaned in. I held my breath as he took the spoon from my hand, his fingers brushing against mine, just for a second, but long enough to make my pulse jump. He tasted it, his tongue flicking over his lips afterward, his gaze still locked onto me. I swallowed hard. "It's good," he murmured. I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. I'm glad. Something unspoken lingered between us. Something thick, heavy, undeniable. And for the first time, I realized that whatever this was, it had already begun. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of the ticking clock on the wall. The house was silent. David was beside me, turned away as usual, his back to me, his breathing slow and steady. Asleep. Distant even in unconsciousness. My mind kept replaying that moment in the kitchen. The way Erick had looked at me. The way I had felt.
The way my body had reacted before my brain even had the chance to process it. Was it just loneliness? That's what I told myself. That's all it was. But then, why couldn't I shake the feeling? I rolled onto my side, squeezing my eyes shut, willing myself to let it go. But the thoughts came anyway, creeping in like shadows stretching across a dimly lit room. I used to feel this way with David. I remembered the early days, when he couldn't keep his hands off me, when his eyes would light up just at the sight of me walking into a room. I used to wake up to long, lingering kisses. Used to feel wanted. Desired. Cherished. But somewhere along the way, that had faded. Work had taken priority. Then stress. Then routine. I tried. God knows I tried. I put effort into myself, into us. I planned date nights, dressed up, initiated conversations. But every attempt had been met with indifference. Politeness, at best. And eventually, I stopped trying. Because nothing hurts more than throwing yourself at someone who doesn't even notice you're falling. I exhaled shakily, pressing my palm to my chest, as if I could steady the erratic beat of my heart. This isn't about Erick. This is just about me. About how empty I feel. That's what I told myself. But deep down, I knew there was something else too. Something more dangerous. I remembered the way Erick's eyes had held mine. Had I imagined it? That lingering look? That shift in the air between us? I shouldn't have even entertained the thought. He was my stepson. There was nothing there. There couldn't be. And yet. The moment had felt so real. So charged. Like a door had cracked open, just a little, just enough to let something forbidden slip through. I turned onto my stomach, burying my face in my pillow. This is ridiculous. Stop thinking about it. But my mind wouldn't let go. I thought about how different Erick was from his father. How he saw me, how he actually listened when I spoke. The way he noticed things, the small details, the shifts in my mood. He asked me if I was okay. When was the last time David had done that? I wasn't doing anything wrong. I hadn't done anything. But my body betrayed me. The heat in my chest. The way my breath had caught when Erick leaned in. The way my fingers still tingled from the brief brush of his skin against mine. Guilt twisted in my stomach. This was insane. He was just being polite. He was just kind. And I was reading too much into it because I was starved for attention. That's all this was. I clenched my jaw, trying to shake off the ridiculous feeling clawing at my insides. I had to let this go. Because if I didn't know if I trusted myself not to want more. I tried to push it out of my mind. Tried to convince myself it was all in my head. But the universe, or maybe my own foolishness, kept placing us in situations that made it impossible to ignore. The first time it happened, I told myself it was a coincidence. I had gotten up in the middle of the night, stomach grumbling, unable to sleep. The house was quiet, cloaked in the kind of stillness that only comes when the world is deep in slumber. I tiptoed into the kitchen, the cool tile against my bare feet sending a shiver up my spine. I reached for a glass in the cabinet, then turned to grab the water jug from the fridge. And nearly collided into Erick. I gasped, my hand flying to my chest. Jesus, you scared me. He let out a quiet chuckle, rubbing the back of his neck. Sorry. I was just getting water. I nodded, stepping aside, but the space between us was too small. As he moved past me, his arm brushed against mine. It was the smallest touch. Barely anything. But my skin burned. I held my breath. The air between us felt thick, heavy, charged. He hesitated for a second, just a second, but I noticed it. The way his eyes lingered on mine, the way something unspoken passed between us. Then, just like that, he was gone, disappearing back down the hallway. I stood there, gripping the counter, my pulse roaring in my ears. It had meant nothing. Nothing. But why was my heart racing? The second time, it was during the day. I was in the living room, scrolling mindlessly through my phone, when Erick walked in and sat across from me. For a while, we just sat there, existing in the same space. Then, out of nowhere, he spoke. Are you happy? I blinked, looking up. What? He was watching me, his expression unreadable. I mean, with my dad. Are you happy? The question caught me so off guard that I actually laughed. A dry, humorless chuckle. That's a complicated question. He tilted his head slightly, waiting. I sighed, setting my phone down. Happiness is a funny thing, Erick. Sometimes, you don't even realize you've lost it until it's too late. His gaze flickered with something. Understanding? Sadness? Then, softer this time, almost a whisper, he asked, so you're not? I swallowed. I should have shut the conversation down. Should have told him that some things aren't meant to be discussed. But instead, I held his gaze and said, I don't know. And I wasn't lying. I didn't know. Because how do you measure happiness when you've been living in a haze of numbness for so long? He didn't say anything after that. Just nodded slowly, as if he understood something I didn't. But from that moment on, something shifted. The way he looked at me changed. It wasn't just polite. Or casual. It was something else. Something I didn't have a name for. And the worst part? I didn't want to stop it. I don't know if I planned it. I'd like to believe it just happened. But deep down, in the part of myself I wasn't ready to confront, I think I had been walking toward this moment all along. It was a rainy evening, the kind where the sky wept endlessly, the soft drumming of raindrops against the windows making the house feel smaller, more intimate. My husband was working late again. I had made dinner, set the table for 3, only for Erick and I to end up eating alone. It had become routine, just the two of us sitting across from each other, the empty chair between us a quiet reminder of the absence I no longer bothered to acknowledge. After dinner, I made tea. Erick lingered in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, watching me as I poured the steaming liquid into 2 mugs. You make this every night, he observed. I smiled faintly, stirring in a spoonful of honey. It helps me sleep. Does it work? Not really. A quiet chuckle. A pause. Then. You ever wonder what it would feel like to just leave? I turned to him, brows furrowing. Leave? He shrugged. Just walk away from everything. Start over. I studied him, the way his fingers drummed absently against the countertop. That sounds like something someone says when they're not happy where they are. He exhaled, rubbing a hand over his jaw. Maybe. Another silence. Not awkward. Just charged. I don't know why I said what I said next. Maybe it was the tea warming my hands. Maybe it was the rain tapping against the windows like a whispered temptation. Or maybe it was the way he was looking at me, curious, intense, like he saw me in a way no one had in years. I lifted my mug, blew gently across the surface, then met his gaze. Do you want to taste it? The words hung between us. I wasn't just talking about the tea. Erick's expression shifted, confusion flickering across his face before something else settled in its place. Something I recognized because I felt it too. For a split second, he said nothing. Then he let out a soft, nervous laugh. "That's probably not a good idea," he said, voice lower now. I tilted my head slightly. "Why not?" His grip on the counter tightened. He looked away, exhaling slowly. "You know why." And I did. Of course, I did. I should have stopped there. Should have laughed it off, changed the subject, pretended it was nothing. But I didn't. Instead, I took a step closer. Close enough to see the way his throat bobbed when he swallowed. Close enough to catch the faint scent of his cologne. Close enough to hear the way his breath hitched when I leaned in. And that was it. That was the moment we crossed a line we could never uncross. I wish I could say that after that moment, everything went back to normal. That we laughed it off, went about our evening, and pretended nothing had shifted. But that would be a lie. Because everything had changed. The air between us was thick with something unspoken, something that neither of us had the courage to acknowledge. Erick didn't finish his tea. He set the mug down on the counter, mumbled something about being tired, and disappeared into his room before I could say anything else. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space he left behind, listening to the distant sound of his door clicking shut. My fingers curled around my mug, the heat seeping into my skin, but inside, I felt cold. I told myself it was nothing. A stupid, meaningless moment. But deep down, I knew better. The next morning, the house felt different. Or maybe it was just me. I woke up to an empty bed, again. My husband had left early for work, as usual, without so much as a goodbye. I told myself I didn't care, but the hollow feeling in my chest suggested otherwise. I lingered in the kitchen, staring at the half-drunk cup of tea Erick had abandoned the night before. A physical reminder of what had almost happened. Then I heard his door open. He stepped out, rubbing sleep from his eyes, wearing a loose t-shirt and sweatpants. Normally, he would give me a groggy morning before heading straight to the fridge, but today, he hesitated. Our eyes met. And for the first time, he looked unsure.
His usual relaxed posture was gone, replaced with stiffness. He was avoiding my gaze, shifting uncomfortably like the air between us had become too heavy. I opened my mouth, ready to say something, to make it normal again, but he beat me to it. "I have to go out today," he muttered, grabbing a bottle of water and twisting the cap open. I blinked. "Oh, okay. Where?" "Just out." A simple answer, but his tone was off. There was something guarded in the way he spoke, something careful. I should have let it go. Should have let him create the distance he clearly wanted. But instead, I said, "Are you avoiding me?" His grip on the water bottle tightened, knuckles turning white. "No," he said too quickly. Lie. He was. And I didn't blame him. Because I was avoiding myself too. The tension didn't fade. If anything, it became worse. For the next few days, Erick barely spoke to me. He spent more time in his room, leaving only when necessary, and even then, his movements were quick, like he didn't want to be caught lingering in the same space as me. I tried to act normal. I smiled when I saw him, asked him how his day was, pretended not to notice the way he flinched whenever our hands accidentally brushed. At night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, guilt clawing at my chest. What was I doing? Why did I feel this way? I told myself it wasn't my fault. I was lonely, neglected. I had spent years being unseen, unheard, unwanted. I wasn't looking for trouble. I wasn't trying to create this tension. But then, why did I feel disappointed when he started avoiding me? Why did I miss the way he used to look at me? My husband never noticed anything. Why would he? He barely noticed me at all. He came home late, left early, and the rare moments we spent in the same space were filled with nothing but small talk and silence. He kissed my cheek like a habit, touched me only in ways that felt obligatory, never out of desire. I had spent years mourning a marriage that was still alive in name but dead in every other way. But now, something was different. Now, I wasn't just invisible to my husband. I was losing Erick too. And somehow, that hurt more than I wanted to admit. I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, my mind an endless loop of what had happened. The moment replayed over and over again, the way his eyes had widened, the way he had hesitated before pulling away. The unspoken tension that had settled between us ever since. It was suffocating. And no matter how many times I tried to tell myself that it was nothing, that I had imagined the shift, that we could go back to how things were before, I knew I was lying to myself. Something had changed. Something I couldn't take back. I turned onto my side, hugging my pillow tightly, as if it could hold me together. The room was dark, silent except for the faint sound of the clock ticking away the seconds. But inside my head, there was nothing but noise. How did I even get here? How did I let things go this far? I was a grown woman, a wife, a mother figure to him, and yet I couldn't ignore the way my heart had raced in that moment. The way something deep inside me had stirred, something I had long thought was buried. Was it just loneliness? Was it just the emptiness of my marriage, the years of feeling invisible, that made me so desperate for attention? Or was it something darker? I hated myself for even thinking it. I hated that, despite everything, a part of me missed the way Erick used to look at me. Before that night, before the tension, before the avoidance. Before he started looking at me like he didn't know who I was anymore. The days passed in a blur. I went through the motions, cooking, cleaning, playing the role of a devoted wife, but inside, I felt like I was unraveling. At dinner, I sat across from my husband, watching as he scrolled through his phone, barely acknowledging my presence. I used to feel hurt by it. Now, I just felt numb. And then there was Erick. He barely looked at me anymore. And when he did, it was fleeting, like he was afraid that if our eyes met for too long, something unspeakable would be exposed. I had lost him. Not in the way I feared before, when I thought he might move out, grow distant like my husband had. No, this was different. I had lost him in a way that was far worse. Because now, when he looked at me, he saw someone else. Someone I never intended to become. One night, when the house was quiet and everyone was asleep, I finally let myself break. I sat on the floor of my bedroom, knees pulled to my chest, as silent tears ran down my face. What was I doing? Who was I becoming? I had always prided myself on being strong. On being the kind of woman who endured, who sacrificed, who held things together, even when everything else was falling apart. But now I didn't even recognize myself. I had crossed a line. Maybe not in the way most people would define it. Maybe nothing had technically happened. But I knew the truth. Because the real betrayal doesn't start with actions. It starts in the mind. In the heart. And I had already gone too far. I wiped my tears away, took a deep breath, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. I needed to fix this. I needed to find a way back. But as I looked into my own eyes, hollow and lost, I realized something that sent a chill down my spine. Some lines, once crossed, can never be undone. Have you ever found yourself standing at the edge of a moment that could change everything? A moment where one step forward could shatter everything you thought you knew about yourself? That's where I was. That's where Erick was. And now, there was no going back. But tell me, what do you think was going through his mind in that moment? Was it shock? Disbelief? Or was it something else? Was there a part of him, just like there was a part of me, that had felt the pull of something dangerous? Something forbidden? I can't stop thinking about it. And I need to know what you think. So tell me, if you were in his shoes, what would you have done? Would you have walked away? Pretended it never happened? Or would you have given in? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it. And if you don't want to miss more shocking real-life confessions, hit that subscribe button now. Because trust me, this is only the beginning. Loneliness can be a dangerous thing. It creeps in slowly, silently, until one day, you wake up and realize you're not the same person you used to be. It makes you see things differently. Makes you crave things you never thought you'd crave. And if you're not careful, it will push you into places you never imagined. That's what happened to me. I never set out to cross any lines. I never thought I'd find myself standing at the edge of something so dangerous, so impossible to take back. But that's the thing about life, it doesn't give you a warning when you're about to make the kind of mistake that will haunt you forever. It doesn't scream, stop. It just lets you walk right into it. And by the time you realize how far you've gone, it's already too late. So, if you're watching this right now, I have one thing to say to you. Be careful. Be careful where your emotions take you. Be careful what you justify to yourself in moments of weakness. Because some mistakes, they don't just go away. Some mistakes stay with you. Some mistakes last forever. Thank you for watching Shocking Infidelity Cases. If you made it this far, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. See you in the next one.